everyone. Welcome to Wealth Redefined. I'm your host, Michael Reynolds, certified financial planner and owner of Elevation Financial. Thanks for joining me as always. Glad you are here. Today, we're going to talk about why the hard stop retirement is losing its appeal and how to design your flex retirement. So what is that? Let's dig into it. So for decades, retirement has followed a pretty similar script. You work full time, you hit a certain age, you throw a party, you stop working completely, maybe go play golf, gold watch, cake, handshake, and then just goof off, right? But that model is kind of falling apart now, and there's some good reasons for it. So more and more people are stepping back from full-time work without stepping away entirely. They're moving into consulting roles. Maybe they're trimming their hours, they're starting small businesses, or shifting into work that's more meaningful and less demanding. In this in-between space where you're no longer kind of grinding at full speed, but you aren't fully retired either, is what some financial planners are calling flex retirement. It's not a compromise. For a lot of people, it's actually a better path. So let's talk about the old model first and why it made sense at the time. So the traditional hard stop retirement made sense in a certain era. Pensions were common. Social Security was designed around the idea that you'd retire at 65 and collect benefits until you died, often within a decade or so. Many jobs were physically demanding, and people couldn't or didn't want to keep doing them in their later years. The financial math worked also. You saved, you accumulated, and then you drew down in a predictable pattern. Retirement planning was pretty linear. But the world has changed significantly. Life expectancy has increased. Pensions have basically disappeared, replaced by 401k plans that put the investment and longevity risk on the individual. And knowledge-based work, which doesn't wear out the body as much, has become far more common. And more importantly, people's identities and sense of purpose have become increasingly tied to their work in ways that can make a hard stop feel jarring rather than liberating. So why is flex retirement getting more popular? So a few reasons. One is financial anxiety. Even high earners with solid savings frequently worry about whether their money will last. A 30-year retirement is a long time to fund, and sequence of returns risk, could mean the danger that a market downturn could damage your portfolio. It's not a small concern. Staying in some form of paid work, even part-time, takes some pressure off your investment portfolio in the early years of retirement. Also, healthcare costs. That's a really big factor. Medicare doesn't kick in until age 65. So if you retire at 60 or even 62, you're looking at a gap that can cost thousands of dollars per month, depending on your health situation and what coverage you need. If you continue to work, even in a reduced capacity, that can sometimes preserve access to employer-sponsored health insurance and bridge that gap more affordably. Also, purpose and identity don't really have an off switch. So for many professionals and business owners also, work isn't just a paycheck. It's structure, it's intellectual engagement, it's relationships, it's a sense of contribution. And going from 50-hour weeks to zero overnight can feel like, falling off a cliff. It's very jarring. And so a flex retirement allows people to kind of decompress gradually while holding on to the parts of work they actually value. Also, flexibility is more available than ever. So remote work, the gig economy, and the growth of consulting and fractional work have really made partial retirement far more practical than it was even 10 years ago. So a former marketing executive, for example, can now consult for 3 or 4 companies at 15 hours a week from home. And that option didn't really exist a generation ago. So I mainly also want to kind of stress that you have permission to do this differently. Here's something I want to say out loud. You don't have to choose between full-time work and full retirement. Those aren't the only 2 options on the table. The hard stop model is so deeply embedded in our cultural understanding of work and retirement that many people never question it. They assume that if we haven't saved enough to retire completely, they failed, or they assume that continuing to work in any capacity past a certain age means they're behind. And neither of those things are really true. Flex retirement is a legitimate, increasingly popular, and often financially superior path to take. And according to research from the Rand Corporation, nearly half of workers over 50 transition through some sort of bridge employment before fully retiring. And so that means if you're drawn to this idea, you're not alone. You're in good company. So think about what you actually want your days to look like. Maybe it's working 20 hours a week on projects you find genuinely interesting. Maybe it's starting that business you've always wanted to try. Maybe it's consulting for a few clients in your industry while having your afternoons free. Maybe it's doing a few months of project work each year and spending the rest traveling or being present for your family. Maybe it's getting a random job in a coffee shop to do something totally different, simple, and just fun. All of that counts. All of that can make sense. So the important shift is giving yourself permission to design a transition that fits your life rather than conforming to a model that was built for a different generation. Your career, your savings, your sense of purpose all belong to you. The flex retirement is simply a framework for using them on your own terms. So if you've been wondering whether there's a middle path, the answer is yes. And the earlier you start planning for it, the more choices you're going to have. So what does flex retirement actually look like? It's not just one thing. It takes different shapes for different people. For some, it's a deliberate reduction in hours at their current employer. They might negotiate down to 30 hours per week or shift to a project-based role. For others, it means leaving their primary career and picking up consulting work in the same industry. They trade the pressure of full-time employment for the flexibility of working with clients on their own terms. Some people use flex retirement to pursue work they've always wanted to do but couldn't when they needed more income. For example, a corporate attorney might step back from the firm and do occasional mediation work. A finance executive might teach a class at a local college or do fractional CFO work for small business. In each case, the common thread is this: earned income continues, but it's reduced, and life has genuinely shifted in the direction of more freedom. So what are the financial considerations for flex retirement? So designing a flex retirement transition isn't just what you want to do with your time. You've got to think through the financial levers, so to speak. So one is Social Security timing. If you're still earning income during flex retirement, you might want to delay claiming Social Security. Claiming your full retirement Social Security while earning above a certain income can temporarily reduce your benefits. So you want to watch out for that. On the other hand, delaying Social Security past full retirement increases your benefit by 8% per year up to age 70. So that's a good reason to maybe let it grow while your flex income covers some of your expenses. So the right answer is going to vary based on your health, your expected longevity, your income needs, your overall plan, but think through those things before you make the transition. And then from a retirement account strategy, you might have more flexibility around your retirement accounts than you realize. So if you're still earning income, you may still be able to continue contributing to a Roth IRA, SEP IRA, solo 401k. And if you're doing consulting work as a self-employed individual, those are available to you. Those are options you can have. And that can extend your tax advantage savings runway in a pretty big way. Also, you might end up in a lower tax bracket during flex retirement, which might be a good time to do Roth conversions. You might be in a lower marginal tax rate, which is a good time to do those types of things. Also, if RMDs, which are required minimum distributions, begin in your 70s, you've got pre-tax retirement savings, flex retirement years before RMDs kick in, and that's an important time to manage your tax situation. So kind of be aware of when RMDs are kicking in. Roth conversions can help reduce those in later years. So watch out for that stuff. And then healthcare planning. So healthcare is a really big consideration for most people in this case. So the healthcare gap between leaving full-time employment and Medicare at age 65 is a pretty important gap to plan for. So during flex retirement, you might need to figure out if you're going to stay on your employer's plan or purchase coverage through the ACA marketplace, use a spouse's plan, or other options. Also, managing cash flow with variable income can be important to figure out. So, consulting and part-time work often lead to, to variable income. So you want to build a cash flow strategy that handles how you're going to manage your cash flow during months where income is lower. It can kind of bounce around and go up and down. How much of a cash buffer do you need? A common approach is to keep 1 to 2 years of expenses in liquid savings so that you can avoid touching your portfolio during short-term dips. And that gives your investments time to recover if the markets are volatile. Also, tax planning is important. So if you're doing consulting or freelance work or starting a business, you're self-employed now, which means you're going to have self-employment taxes. Again, you could be eligible for a solo 401k or a SEP. Also, you need to watch out for quarterly estimated taxes. If your taxes aren't being withheld from your paycheck anymore, you're responsible for paying those directly in the form of quarterly estimated taxes. So you want to design your flex retirement intentionally. It works best when it's designed as opposed to just kind of stumbled into. So, really plan out what this means for you. You could talk to your financial advisor about, questions like, at what income level does flex retirement become viable? What's the healthcare strategy between full-time work and Medicare? How is time going to be structured, and how much work do you want to be doing? What does your Social Security strategy look like? How will you handle income variability without feeling financially stressed? So, flex retirement can be a really good way to exit a career and maintain your sense of purpose, flexibility, and really transition gradually into a new chapter. So, again, you don't have to just clock out at age 65 and play golf forever. Like, it's not that simple anymore. So, there's lots of options in between, and you can design a flex retirement that is a much more meaningful and fulfilling transition into later years while also enjoying life more. So think about that as you plan your flex retirement, and know that that option is available. It's not just as black and white as previous generations kind of faced. So, all right. Hope that was helpful. So as always, if you have questions, you can find me at elevationfinancial.com. You can find me on pretty much any social platform, and you can reach out to me there. Or if you want to schedule a free consultation, you can do that on my website, which again is elevationfinancial.com. Thanks for joining me today. Have a great day. See you next time.